Hello everybody and welcome back for yet another crochet tutorial. Let's go ahead and gloss over the simple materials that I will be using to crochet this really lightweight and flowy t-shirt. If you guys are interested, I will also have a downloadable PDF written pattern for this crochet top, so you can check down below in the description and see it on my website. But let's go ahead and move on to the materials. First and foremost, I will be using a #1 fingering weighted fiber. For this tutorial, I will be using the Hobbii Friends wheel. As you can see, I have two different shades here because I will be going for a little bit of a striped effect. Now the Friends wheel is labeled as a #2 fine weighted fiber, but in my opinion, this is just so super thin and fine that I would classify this as a fingering weight yarn. The Hobbii Friends wheel is also labeled as a 55% cotton and 45% acrylic fiber, so do your best to choose your fibers accordingly. I like the cotton acrylic blend because it gives it enough structure, but it is still breathable and touchably soft, so that is going to be the fiber choice for this tutorial. I will also be using a 3.5mm crochet hook. If you guys know me, I rarely crochet with a hook size this tiny, but again, because we have the fingering weight yarn, we do need to size our hooks down just a little bit. And then last but not least, I will be using a darning needle to help weave in our ends, scissors to help cut our yarn. Feel free to grab a little measuring tape so that you can cater this towards your own sizing. As always, this is another made to measure pattern. And then last but not least, this is totally optional, but you can grab some stitch markers just to help with the placement of the shirt towards the very end of this tutorial. So let's go ahead and dive in. The very first measurement that I want to take is going to estimate how long this shirt is going to be on my own body. What I'm going to do is grab my measuring tape, and starting from the very top section of my shoulders, I'm going to measure down to wherever I would like this shirt to hit me. If you guys would like a more cropped shirt, have this stop at around your belly button. Keeping that initial measurement in mind, I can go ahead and start off with my beginning chain. What I want to do is create this chain in multiples of 8 plus 7. I've just finished up my starting chain, and this is what it should be looking like. For my own personal body measurements, I've decided to go with a chain of 80 plus 7. So in total, I do have 87 chains. Let's go ahead and start working on row 1 of this pattern. For this tutorial, the chain 3 will consist as a double crochet. So what I'm going to do is yarn over, skip the very first 3 chains from my hook, and insert my hook into the 4th chain space available. From here, I can go ahead, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. So at this point already in the pattern, I have 2 double crochet. Again, I have the chain 3 and the second double crochet right here. From this point, I can yarn over, find the next chain space available, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. And what I'm going to do is repeat 1 double crochet into each chain space for the entire row. At this point in my work, this is what your double crochet should be looking like. So for the rest of row 1, I'm just going to continue with 1 double crochet across the entire row. I've just finished up row 1, and this is what my double crochets are looking like. Let's go ahead and move on to row 2. I'm going to turn my work first, and from this point, I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And again, this chain of 3 will consist as the first double crochet. From here, I'm going to yarn over and skip the first 2 stitches in the row and insert my hook into the 3rd stitch. I'm going to place 1 double crochet. From here, I'm going to chain 1, yarn over, and place 1 more double crochet right back into that same stitch. So just to clarify, into the 3rd stitch, I have a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. From here, I'm going to yarn over and skip 3 stitches, and into the 4th stitch, I'm going to place 5 double crochet. So this is my first double crochet, going right back into that same stitch. This is my second double crochet, my 3rd, my 4th, and 1 more for a 5th double crochet. So this is what my pattern is starting to look like. And at this point, I can go ahead and start a repeat all over. So after the 5 double crochet, I'm going to skip 1, 2, and 3 stitches. I'm going to yarn over and place 1 double crochet into the 4th stitch space available, chain 1, and double crochet all into the same stitch. So this is what we're looking like. And again, we're going to repeat, skip 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th stitch available, we're going to work 5 double crochet. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and here is my 5th double crochet, all going back into the same exact stitch. Once more, so I can walk you guys through it, I'm going to yarn over and skip 1, 2, 3 stitches, insert my hook into the 4th stitch space, and work the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and again yarn over and skip 1, 2, 3, insert my hook into the 4th stitch space, and work 5 double crochet. I'm going to keep repeating this pattern until I have 2 stitches remaining at the end of my row. I'm coming up here to the end of row 2, and as you can see, I've just worked a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet, and I have 2 stitches remaining. So what I'm going to do is yarn over and pick up the very 3rd chain from our chain 3 and place a double crochet. So this is what your row 2 should be looking like. Let's go ahead and move on to row 3. For row 3, I'm going to turn my work first and create my chain of 3. And this chain of 3 does count as the very first double crochet in the row. From here, what I'm going to do is place 1 double crochet into each stitch across. So I'm going to yarn over, skip that very first stitch space, and place my hook into the 2nd stitch and place a double crochet. From this point, I'm going to yarn over, and where I have this chain 1 space in between the 2 double crochet, I'm just going to insert my hook directly into that open space below the chain and work a double crochet. Yarn over, finding the next stitch, place another double crochet, and I'm just going to work my way across the row just like this. So picking up every single stitch space and working 1 double crochet across the row. I'm starting to approach another chain 1 space. So again, I'm going to yarn over, find this open gap right here just below the chain 1 space, insert my hook, and place my double crochet. And just carry on along row 3. I'm starting to approach the end here of row 3, and as you can see, I have worked 1 double crochet across the entire row. So at this point, I only have 1 stitch remaining to be placed into the very top of that chain 3 space. But what I want to do after every 3 rows is change out my color. So what I'm going to do is yarn over, find the very top loop of that chain 3 space, insert my hook, pull up a loop. From here, I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2, and with 2 remaining on my hook, I'm going to introduce my secondary color, loop it over my hook, just like so. And what I'm going to do is pull the new color through to finish out that very last double crochet. So at this point, I'm just going to take a minute, tie the 2 ends together so that they don't unravel, and then we can move on to row 4. So just a quick little recap, this is what 3 rows of my work is looking like. As I just mentioned, I am going to be changing out my colors after every 3 rows. The pattern is going to repeat rows 1 through 3 for the entire pattern. So what I'm going to do here for the 4th row is mimic row 1 by placing 1 double crochet across the entire row. For row 5, I will be working with our little shell stitches, and then for row 6, I will come back and work 1 double crochet across the entire row. So just to repeat and be very clear, the pattern is a repeat of rows 1 through 3 over and over. So let's go ahead and start working on row 4. I'm going to go ahead and turn my work first and then create my chain of 3. And now here for row 4, I'm going to work 1 double crochet across the entire row. So always keep in mind that we are skipping that very first stitch in the row because we have that chain 3, and I'm going to insert my hook into the second stitch. If you guys want, you can weave in your ends along the way. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm wrapping my ends above the very top of my hook just to help disguise them as I work across row 4. So this is my second double crochet in the row. Again, we're looking for the very next stitch space available. And just to recap, we are working 1 double crochet across the entire row. I've just reached the end of row 4, and this is what the new color change is looking like. So let's go ahead and move on to row 5. For row 5, I've turned my work, and now I can go ahead and chain my 3. This second row here after the color change is where I will be working with that little shell pattern. So I'm going to yarn over and skip the very 2 first stitches in my row and insert my hook into the 3rd available stitch. And now we're going to work our first little cluster. So I have the double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet all going back into the same stitch. And now at this point I can yarn over, skip 3 stitches, and insert my hook into the 4th available stitch. And this is where we're going to work our 5 double crochet cluster. So there's 1, here's 2, 3, 4, and here is my 5th double crochet. At this point, I can yarn over, skip the next 3 stitches, insert my hook into the 4th available stitch, and we're going to work that first cluster again. So I have a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet, all going into the exact same stitch. And I'm just going to repeat this until the very end of my row until I have 2 stitches remaining. I've reached the end of row 5, and as you can see, I've just worked my very last smaller cluster, and I have 2 stitches remaining. So I'm going to yarn over and pick up the very top loop or the 3rd chain from our chain 3 and finish out with a double crochet into that very last stitch. So this is what the end of row 5 is looking like. Let's go ahead and move on to row 6 and finish it up real quick. To start row 6, I've already turned my work. And now I can create my chain of 3, which counts as my first double crochet. For row 6, again, I'm just going to be repeating 1 double crochet across the entire row. So I'm going to skip that very first stitch available and insert my hook into the 2nd stitch and work my 2nd double crochet. And from here, picking up every single stitch along the way. For my chain 1 sections, I'm just inserting right into that open gap and then carrying on. I'm starting to reach the end of row 6, and as you can see, I still have 1 more stitch to place, but because I have reached 3 rows with this new color, I'm gonna go ahead and swap out my very last stitch with my original tan shade. So what I'm going to do is yarn over, pick up the very top of that chain 3 space, pull up a loop with 3 on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And now that I still have 2 remaining on my hook, I can go ahead, reach back to my original color, loop this over the end of my hook. And from here, I'm going to use this new color to pull through and finish out my double crochets. And that is how I switch out my colors at the end of every 3 rows. So let's go ahead, set this down and zoom you guys out. So at this point, in order to continue working on our back panel, what I'm going to do is turn my work vertically, because this is how the piece is going to look and rest across our body. In order to continue working on our back panel, what I'm going to do is add as many rows as I see necessary in order to get this piece as wide as I would like this to rest across my body. So if you guys would like a more baggier, casual fit, then make this a little bit wider. Of course, always hold this up against your own body and double check the sizing. If you guys would like this to be a little bit more form-fitting, then have the back panel from edge to edge, reach from pit to pit. But like I said earlier, I do want this to have a little bit more of a baggy, casual feel. So I'm gonna add on a good amount of rows, hold this up and double check the sizing on my own body, and I will be back to show you guys how to work on the front panels. I've just finished up working on the back panel, and so far this is what she's looking like. As you can see, it's essentially just one gigantic rectangle. As I've mentioned earlier, this pattern does repeat every 3 rows, and every 3 rows does make up one solid stripe, and in total I have 18 stripes. So I have 9 stripes of the tan color and 9 stripes of the darker brown. I can go ahead and set the back panel to the side and start working on my 2 front panels. And believe it or not, our 2 front panels are going to be matching in style to how we created our back panel. Now, one thing I do want to note is that however wide that you want to create your back panel, just make sure that you are creating it with an even number of stripes. So as I said earlier, I have a total of 18, so I can divide that equally into 9 stripes on the left side and 9 stripes on the right hand side. So keeping that in mind, I have already gone ahead and created the very first front panel, and as I said, I have 9 stripes here for our left panel. Now, as you guys can probably see, I went ahead and started my panel just the same as before with my light tan shade, and because I have a total of 9 rows, I also ended it with this light tan shade. So putting this first panel to the side and going onto our other side of the panel, I'm gonna go ahead and pick up with my darker brown shade and carry on for 9 more rows and finish it off again with the dark brown shade. That way, when we come together to sew everything up, we're gonna have the same symmetrical type of rectangle. I know I'm probably over explaining it, but I just want to make sure that you guys see how I'm creating the front and the back panels. So at this point, I can go ahead and start working on the secondary panel. And just to reiterate, I'm going to start off with the same exact number of chains that I did for the back panel. For me, that was a total of 80 plus 7. So at this point, I can go ahead, create another chain of 80 plus 7 and start that pattern all over. And I'll come back on camera in a little bit to show you guys how we're going to stitch up our little polo t-shirt. I've just finished up working on both of my front panels, and as you can see, they're cute, they're ready to be sewn together. And as I mentioned earlier, one panel starts and stops with that very first light tan shade, and then the second panel picks up with the secondary color, this darker cocoa, and ends off with the darker cocoa shade as well. So now that we have essentially a matching 2 front panels to our back panel, we can go ahead and set these to the side because it's time to start finishing up or start working on the sleeves. So what I want to do for the sleeve section is I'm going to go ahead and place my back panel up against my body, and from there what I want to do is find a really good stopping point for how wide I would like these sleeves to sit on my body. Kind of pinch around, see if I like how wide the shape of the sleeves are, and then from there I can go ahead, grab a little stitch marker and just kind of pinch and place the stitch marker wherever I feel I would like the bottom of the sleeves to hit, in order to make crocheting the rest of the sleeves a little bit more simple for myself. Because we do have a repeating pattern, I've gone ahead and placed my stitch marker through the very top loop directly above this mini shell stitch that we have here. So again, we have these larger 5 clusters, but I'm choosing to place my stitch marker through one of these smaller clusters right here. And for my body size, this is the 6th smaller cluster from the very top shoulder section. So I've just gone ahead and counted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here is my 6th. So what I want to do in order to make sure that this pattern repeats smoothly is, although I have placed my stitch marker through the very top loop directly above that cluster, what I'm going to do is count out 2 more stitches to the right of that, because at the very start of that repeating cluster row, we do need to skip the very first 2 stitches and work that cluster into the 3rd stitch in the row. So to explain this a little bit easier, wherever you choose to place the bottom of your sleeve for a smaller cluster, go ahead and count out 2 more stitches to the right of that, move your little stitch marker, and this is where we're going to start our sleeves. So now that I have my stitch marker moved 2 stitches to the right of the smaller cluster, this is where I'm going to go ahead, attach my new yarn, and start repeating that same exact pattern over and over. We're just going to have essentially like a smaller rectangle coming off for the sleeve section. So we're essentially just going to build straight up and off of this panel just to make those rectangular sleeves. And for this portion, again, we're just repeating rows 1 through 3. So at this point, I can go ahead, attach my lighter shade because I want to repeat this pattern. So once I have that lighter shade on, I'm gonna work 3 more rows of that pattern, switch back to my darker shade, work another 3 rows. And at this point, it's just a matter of trying on the top, holding it up against your body and seeing exactly how many rows you would prefer for the sleeves. I'm again going to aim for a little bit more of a casual fit. So I'm probably gonna add on only about this much of sleeves, but if you guys would like this to be a little bit more of a longer sleeve, feel free to add on as many or as little rows as you need. Just make sure that you're sticking to the 3-row repeat pattern. Now that I've gone ahead and attached my new yarn, I can go ahead and continue on with that pattern. I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys how I start the sleeves. So again, picking up from where I've attached my yarn, I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and chain 3. And this is going to be the very start of our row. Always keep in mind that that chain 3 does count as the very first double crochet in the row. So from there I can yarn over, find the very next stitch. And again, for row 1 of this repeat pattern, we're just placing 1 double crochet into every single stitch across the row. So this is what the very start of the pattern should look like. And I'm just gonna be repeating again rows 1 through 3 until I can get the sleeves to the appropriate length that I could prefer. I've just finished up working the first 3-row repeat for my sleeves, and as you can see, it's just starting to come off as like a little rectangle from the original body section. So what I'm gonna do is just continue to add on that pattern over and over, as I explained earlier, until I can hold this up to my body and see if I like how long the sleeves are on me. All right, I'm back, and so far this is what my back piece is looking like, or my back panel. So as I discussed earlier, I added on my little sleeves to both edges of the back panel. For my own body size, I chose to go with 5 repeat rows of the stripes on one side, and of course I also have 5 matching stripes on the other hand side. So this is what the back panel is looking like. It's just all connected at this point. And I have also gone in and repeated those same exact steps on both of my front panels. So as you can see here, we have one panel, the left side, with the corresponding 5 repeat stripe rows, and of course you can assume that I've gone ahead and repeated that on the right hand panel as well. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rows all attached to my very basic rectangles here. So at this point, now that I have my sleeves completed, I can go ahead and start connecting the panels along the very top edge seam, as well as down through the arms and down the panel. Now, as you can see, our rectangles do meet at the very center, and of course, we don't want to seam all the way up through here because we need to make room for our neckline. So what I'm gonna do is choose to leave off a few inches on both intersections of the chest seam here. So this is going to be a section where it is definitely made to fit. I'm just going to go ahead and use some stitch markers and place them corresponding along the top edge, and then just kind of double check this on my body to see how much I would like to choose to leave the very center open. This is also going to be part of that polo neckline right here. So this is all just kind of trial and error. I'm just going to pinch a good old spot through both of the panels, and I'll repeat this on both sides. And I want to make sure that these edges of the very top seam do fit comfortably around my neck, but at the same time are not too open and like falling off of my shoulders. So go ahead, pick a few different placements, try it on, and once you have yours fitted, you can go ahead, attach a new yarn from the very corner, and just slip stitch or even single crochet all the way up until your stitch marker. I just finished up seaming the very top shoulder sections. So there is one, and here is the other. And of course, I did make sure to stop where my stitch markers were so that I have enough room to fit my neck and my head through. And now at this point, I'm just gonna repeat that process If you guys are wondering, I am using single crochets, but at this point I'm just gonna head to the under armpit section and straight down the side panels, and I'm just gonna follow that same exact technique, attach a new yarn at either corner, and just very simply single crochet the two panels together. I am making sure to pick up just one single strand, or like the very slightest bit of yarn from each panel, because I don't want the seamings to be very thick and chunky. All right, so now at this point, I officially have all of my seams seamed together and single crocheted. So we have that seam up here along the top shoulder section, as well as down underneath the armpit and further down through the body panels. At this point in the pattern, it is totally wearable. You can stop here and she's just good to go. You can just weave in the rest of your ends, and this is a wearable piece at that. But if you guys would like to take this a little step further, I would like to go in along the collar section and add just a few rows of single crochet to give it a little bit more of a polo collared type feel. I also want to go down here and just hand sew on some buttons. The really great thing about this pattern is if I use very tiny buttons, I can just slip that through any section where I have a shell stitch, or you could even slip it through where we have the double crochets. It's completely up to you, but I'm just going to choose to hand sew on a few buttons right here and just find little shell gaps that I can wiggle my button in and out of. So for the very last optional step, I am going to go in again with single crochets up here along the very top portion of our collar or neckline. What I'm going to choose to do is only add single crochets starting at the second stripe. So I'm going to start my single crochets right here, right after the first 3 rows, single crochet in the round, and then when I come back around, I am going to stop my single crochets at the second stripe again. So when this shirt is laying open on the body like so, the additional little collar that I'm going to make right now is going to rest 1 stripe above the very bottom. So I'm going to start it here and end it here, and I'm just going to work back and forth in the round over and over for as many rows as I would like until I can get this collar as wide as I would like it to be on my own body. To go ahead and start working on the little polo neckline, I do have my yarn attached here just below the first stripe. So right here, starting at the second stripe, this is where my yarn is attached. I can go ahead, pull up a loop and chain 1, and I'm going to go directly back into that stitch and place a single crochet. And as I said earlier, I'm just going to be going all the way around the neckline, placing single crochets wherever I see fit. Try your best to space these out as evenly as possible. We don't want there to be too large of a gap, but at the same time, we don't want them to be too spaced out where it's a little bit tight on our neckline. So I'm just finding any good spot that I can find to wiggle my hook in and out of, and I'm just gonna place the rows of single crochet. I've just finished up the first round of single crochets, and as I discussed earlier, I am stopping 1 stripe below the very end of the row. So here's where my single crochets end. I just worked all the way in the round across the neckline, coming back to where we first attached our yarn. And now I can go ahead and just place 1 single crochet into every single stitch across the entire row. So this is all that I'm doing to build upon the collar. Just placing 1 single crochet across, picking up every single stitch, and I'm just going to do this for as many rows as I feel necessary. Again, if you guys would like a shorter, smaller collar, only add on a few, but I'm going to aim for probably like 1.5 inches worth of collar, but that can all change and vary. So I will come back on camera towards the very end of this and show you guys what my collar is looking like. I've just finished up crocheting this little collar polo section. For those who are wondering, I added a total of 13 rows of just single crochet over and over and over. It is essentially just a giant rectangle, but when I kind of flip it down and fold it and iron it, she will stay in place and give us a little bit more of that polo neckline that I'm always trying to achieve. So after that's all completed, I went in by hand and just sewed on these little teeny tiny buttons all the way down, and I just chose to sew on my buttons onto that very last row of double crochets just right here on the very edge. That way I can find a little hole wherever I have my little shell sections, slip it through, And at that point, your top is all complete. So I'm gonna go ahead, iron this bad boy, and she is ready to wear.